poster shot, someone's getting fired.
That was majestic.
So I watched Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie, a few days ago, and well, I've been wanting to do a review for it for a long time, but I didn't have the time or effort to do it, so I guess I'm going to talk about it today. But before I'm going to talk about the movie, I first want to talk about the show itself as a whole. So, Rise of the TMNT was a show that I'll admit I was a bit skeptical at first, since, the show was pretty much changing a lot from the original source material. For one, they made Raphael the leader rather than Leonardo, which of course I was immediately skeptical of because, I'm just used to Leonardo being the leader. Second of all, is the team gaining mystical powers and their new weapons. Which the mystical powers angle, I like that because, I like mystical shit. But the new weapons, I just weren't feeling it. Especially from the first images, I was like, I don't really like their new weapons. I mean, I don't know how this is going to work with them. And finally, is the fact that the turtles were all different species. Like, for instance, Leonardo is a red-hued slider, Raphael is an alligator snapping turtle, Donatello is a soft-shell turtle, and Michelangelo is a box turtle. However, I ended up watching the first episode out of curiosity, and well, it wasn't that bad as I expected. In fact, it was pretty decent. I mean, granted, it's not perfect, but I still find it enjoyable. For one, I really love the animation. I adore it. It's so fluid and very expressive, and I especially adore how to use it in the action scenes. It makes everything so good and has that high energy pace to it that you'll see throughout the show. Second of all, the characters themselves were also pretty fun. The cast really fit the characters perfectly, and I love the dynamics in each episode. And well, yeah, you can make the argument that they're all the same, they have the same personality. I would argue that by the following episodes, you really get to know who the turtles are and what are their personalities. Like, for instance, Raph, being the leader, is more of the overprotective older brother type, since he cares more about his brothers and what happens to them. Not just his brothers, but his family as well. Then, of course, you have Leo, who is, since he's not the leader, is more of a laid-back goofball who doesn't take anything seriously, and he essentially just jokes around and delivers quips in inappropriate situations. Think of it as sort of like an MCU hero. Donnie is more of a sarcastic and confident type of guy. Since he's the brains of the turtles, he thinks he has higher knowledge compared to the rest of the team. So that makes him, of course, the more confident one. And finally, Mikey, who is more of a fun and bouncy kind of guy, but is more or less a very optimistic member who sees the best in everyone, and of course, he loves art, so yeah, that's cool. But of course, I can't leave out all the other characters, such as April O'Neil, who in this version is more of a rowdy and sassy teen who loves to join in on the action. And I'll admit, I like her, even if she had a bit of a race swap. I don't mind it, since I like her look and her attitude and her personality, so yeah. And of course, as for Splinter, well, I'll admit, I didn't like how he was portrayed in the first few episodes, since he felt more like a lazy dad compared to the Turtle Sensei like previous incarnations. But eventually, he did get more and more development as we get to know him better, who he was, and why he acts like a lazy dad. And I just kinda got used to it after a few episodes, so yeah. Speaking of, let's talk about the villains. So yeah, all the villains were pretty good. I love how they're unique and have their own abilities. And plus, I love that build up to the Shredder for Season 2. And oh yeah, speaking of Season 2, those finales, they were so good. The amount of depth, emotional moments, and action that got amped up for it, it's really good that I really can't help but watching it over and over again. Like, it's really good. Like, so good. But if there is one thing that I would critique about the show, it's the fact that it can get a bit goofy and sometimes doesn't take that much seriously. It doesn't take itself way too seriously, sorry. Like, I know it's for kids, and of course not everything has to be, dark and serious, but there were some moments, particularly in like the first episode of Season 2 and some of the finales, that there were some moments where it was gonna get serious, but sometimes it can be ruined by some of the jokes, which can throw off the intention of the scene. So yeah, that would be the one thing I would critique. But overall, the show itself was still pretty enjoyable and kept me entertained. Okay, now with me talking about the show out of the way, now we can get to the reason why you're watching this video, the movie itself. So now, what do I think of the movie? Was it good? Was it bad? Or was it fine? Well, you'll be surprised to know that the movie is good. Actually, scratch that, it's really damn good. In fact, I actually found myself watching the movie more than 5 times. That's how good it was. But now, why is it good? Well, let's go over to the reasons why. Let's discuss why Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles the movie is pretty damn good. As I mentioned earlier, the animation of the show is really good. It's really fluid and expressive, and in this movie they amped it up to 100. Since it's of course, well, a movie, it has to have more of a cinematic approach to it, and oh my lord, it was really good. Easily the best animation I've ever seen in an animated show, as well as in a movie. That and Into the Spider-Verse, but yeah. But it's not just the animation. Everything about this movie is also really good, like the music, which I feel like no one has ever discussed about it. But yeah, the music, it's really good. It's really, really good. It matches the scene that is being portrayed, whether it's emotional, action-packed, or joyful. No matter which scene, it matches it with the following. But now let's get into the meat and potatoes of this review. The story, the characters, as well as their arcs. More specifically, Leo's arc, which I just cannot wait to gush about. But first, let's talk about the story. So the story itself was pretty straightforward. Not only that, but much like the season 2 finales, it was much more darker and had more emotional moments. Also, I love how there's some sequences where there's some shots of blood, which I can actually appreciate since it gives the action scenes a little more weight and it raises the stakes even higher. But now, what's the story about? So the story follows Casey Jones as he is traveling back in time to warn the Turtles about the arrival of the Krang. Along the way, Leonardo is forced to mature himself and to become the leader that he was destined to be. Now, as I mentioned before, the big hoopla was that when the show was being announced, it was the fact that Raphael was going to be the leader rather than Leonardo, which of course, again, I was skeptical of because, I was used to it being the other way around. However, at the end of the season 2 finale, there's like a little short sequence where Splinter pretty much just automatically says that,
"Oh, and Blue, you are the leader now."
Wait, what?
and that was it. And you can tell in this movie that Raph is sort of giving advice to Leo while also telling him that he needs to grow up to not only be a hero, but also to become the leader that he was destined to be. But again, I want to save Leo's character arc gushing for later as we get into the characters. So, the characters themselves were also pretty good. Our main turtle cast were pretty much the same as they were in the show. However, they do have to overcome obstacles, such as of course defeating the Krang. Now, speaking of the Krang, they might have to be the most powerful incarnation of the Krang that I have ever seen in any other TMNT media, because not only are they stronger, but they are possibly the most, and I mean the most scariest version of the Krang compared to any other version of them. Because they pretty much can possess not only people, but also transportation vehicles. Yes, you hear me right, they can possess transportation vehicles, such as an attack helicopter, and even a subway train. Yeah, that's how powerful this version of the Krang are. But anyways, the other characters were also got some time to shine as well, most notably April O'Neil, who was possibly the most underrated star of the show, alongside Donatello and Michelangelo, simply because they had the best action sequences of the movie. Splinter was also good, as well as Casey Jones, so that's pretty much it. However, if there is one thing I could complain about the characters, is the fact that there's only like 2 that are missing, which is of course Baron Draxum and Cassandra. I mean, we did see Cassandra as sort of like cameo as a picture, but not Draxum, which is sad because but I like to think that he was probably busy, defeating like Krang somewhere else. But yeah. Okay, now that we got the characters out of the way, now I really want to talk about is character arcs. More specifically, Leonardo's character arc, because oh boy, it's really good in this. So again, as I mentioned earlier in the video, Rise's version of Leonardo is more or less a laid-back goofball who doesn't take anything seriously. But in this movie, Leo is pretty much forced to stop acting childish, to not only be a hero, but also the leader that he was destined to be. That alone has to be the best character arc I ever saw. Not only that, But we see this Leo becoming the classic version that we come to know and love. Because he not only admits that his actions are reckless, and can harm his family, but he also cares about them. And of course, I love it. And also, seeing Leo sacrifice himself to not only stop him at Krang, but to save his family was so good that I ended up tearing up. Like, oh my god, that's like something that the classic Leonardo would do, and it's so good that I was about to cry. But I think that's enough gushing about Leo's character arc. Yeah, I know it's like short, but hey, I didn't have enough time to write down else, because that's pretty much what I have to say about Leo's character arc. It's really good. However, I do want to answer this question though. Do you need to watch the show to watch the movie? And to that, I would say no, because yeah, they do make mentions about their defeat of the Shredder in the finale, and their appearance is the same as that, but they also having their classic weapons. The movie pretty much plays it as a standalone TMNT story. So no, you don't have to watch the show because it's pretty much just its own thing. But anyway, so if I have to rate this movie, I'll probably give it a strong 8 out of 10. It was definitely really good and definitely watchable. Definitely one of the best things I ever saw in 2022. Well, not the best, but one of the best movies I ever saw.